There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Product Coffee. Good morning.
Morning.
Hey, all right. So it looks like, oh, haha, it would help if I plug in my earbuds a lot. There we go. There we go. Hey, Diane. Hey, Robert, Jerry. We got a few other folks filtering in here. So as soon as we get a few more people in here, we'll start doing some introductions and going around the room. But in the meantime, and if you haven't been here to Product Coffee before, what we do is for about the first half hour here, we're just going to have some product management discussion, talk about what's on our mind, what has our attention. If you have your camera on, I will invite you to introduce yourself to everybody here in the audience, and I'll get to as many people as I can. We'd love to hear about you, who you are, where you're from, and what has your attention right now. Maybe you've got a big win you want to celebrate, or maybe you've got a challenge that you're trying to figure out, a problem you're trying to solve in the product management space, and you'd like some advice or suggestions from other product people, maybe some other experiences. So turn those cameras on and we'll invite you to introduce yourself and join the conversation. If you want to join in and you can't turn your camera on, that's okay too. Just raise your virtual hand and we'll know you're interested in jumping in and for some reason just aren't able to turn on your camera this morning. That's just fine too. But we'll let a few more people get plugged in before we actually start that. And in the meantime, let me make sure everybody can now unmute themselves as needed if you want to just jump in and chit chat for a minute. So there's been a lot going on in the product world over the last few days. Facebook just announced another 10,000 layoffs, or Meta, excuse me, not Facebook. So that's really interesting. I think there's some product implications there. ChatGPT 4 just dropped yesterday for folks who are kind of tracking that and looking at generative AI. There's some pretty cool stuff you can do with that. I've been playing with that quite a bit. I'm kind of nerding out on it, to be completely honest with you. It's gotten pretty scary. But a lot of things going on. We got a few people plugged in here now. So let's start with some introductions. And hey, Graham, welcome back to Product Coffee. Why don't you jump up here and introduce yourself and tell everybody what has your attention these days?
Sure thing. Thanks, Jason. Hi, everyone. I see some familiar faces from last time I was able to make it here, and a few new faces as well to me. So nice to meet you all. I'm Graham. I'm a product manager based out of the UK here, in case the accent doesn't give that away. I work for a company called Allego, who are a sales enablement provider, and the product that I manage lives in the conversation intelligence space. So that's all about serving up insights about what's going on in people's sales calls to people who are having those conversations to try and help them do a better job of having those selling conversations. I didn't actually come with a question or a challenge that I'm facing at the minute, so I'm kind of hopeful that maybe someone here has some good advice for me or some direction. So one of the things that we do in our product is we take data from CRMs and we associate that with the conversations that we're tracking. And we try and serve those up to the end user to say, hey, this call that you had was with this contact and it was progressing this deal and that sort of thing. Because we're consuming that data from third parties, and because the third parties are CRMs, we get very, very dirty data when we're working in this space, orphaned records and duplication and all of that sort of thing. And I'm really struggling with this challenge at the moment to try and direct my tech team into how we can best serve up sensible information to the end user when the source for the data ultimately is A, outside of our direct control, and B, pretty nasty, pretty dirty, pretty unsanitized data. So I guess my question to the group really is, does anyone have any good pointers or any good places for learning? How do you guys handle when you've got a challenge like this where you're not in direct control of the input, but you need to make best use of it in the output that you're going to serve up to customers and to users?
That is a good meaty one. And if anybody has some thoughts on that, please just throw your hand up, whether you're on camera or not, your virtual hand, hit the reactions panel down below. I can tell you a few years ago, I was actually working on a product that was integrating with Salesforce CRM specifically. We also did some stuff with some other CRMs, NetSuite and Microsoft Dynamics. And so faced a similar problem, even with things just like job titles and very basic information, getting very dirty or inconsistent data and having to reconcile all of that. At the time, this was probably 6 or 7 years ago, Graham. Our go-to solution at that time was literally just rules-based transformations to look for things that might be useful and do some cleanup. One of the things that I think is really emerging as a practical solution is some of the generative AI technology that is coming across right now. So if I look at Google has announced that they're opening up their language AI platform. ChatGPT or OpenAI just dropped ChatGPT 4, and I've been playing with a lot of those tools. And I think Salesforce is using what are they using? Are they using ChatGPT at Salesforce? They just updated Einstein. Yeah, it's ChatGPT that they're using as well. So, and what I've had some success with in playing with that language AI is giving it an input and saying things like simplify this for me or clarify this for me or summarize this for me. There's still a lot of imperfection in that, but that might be a place worth trying to just look at that data and bring it in and let AI start working and learning to clean up the data for you. I was actually just thinking about that very problem a few minutes ago as I'm thinking about a CRM for our product coffee audience. And one of the things that I was thinking about doing was using that to reconcile people's titles and roles so that we could get a more uniform view of who is in our audience based on kind of common role and title combinations. That's one direction I'd look at. Is that the kind of answer that you're looking for, or are you looking for something else?
It's definitely really good food for thought. Yeah, like, we make use of information that has been through third-party AIs and third-party machine learning platforms, but we've never really, we have very specific areas where we do use those, and then we have whole other areas of the data that we manage where we don't pass any of that through there. So it's something that hadn't really occurred. But yeah, keen to hear, where do people look for learnings like this as well? Like I'm coming with the question because I feel like this is a problem that 20 other people in the world have solved already. And it's like, how do I find those, especially when so much of this stuff is proprietary?
Right. Allison, you have a thought. Jump in here.
Yeah, I would just confirm what Jason was echoing there about the summarization part. I've just started to explore with it myself and found that, right, we would do this work anyways, but the functionality is there to give us that, here's dirty stuff, what's clean. I know my research is not clean at all when I start looking at things and trying to understand a problem. So, right, our notes are going to be all over the place, and it can give you a first pass to save you some time of distilling down the valuable information either your customer or your business units are going to want to see there in relation to that data.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Allison.
And Jerry has posted in the chat that Troy McGinnis, and he dropped a URL in here as well, focusedobjective.com, has done some interesting stuff on data cleanup as well. Might be a source worth looking at. Another place that you might find some thought leadership, I'm not sure, I'm just pulling this out of the air. There is a company called Flatfile, and they specialize in data transformation, specifically taking complex data and literally getting it into text-based flat files so that you can easily transport it between systems and onboard client data. They may have some thought in that space as well. I'd maybe check out the LinkedIn posts or profiles of some of their leading employees. There might be some thought leadership there.
Cool, that's excellent. Well, that gives me like 3 more avenues to explore than I had 5 minutes ago. So that's definitely useful, folks. I don't want to consume the entire social time here, but yeah, really useful to hear people's thoughts there.
Well, that's what we're here for. And so I'm glad you kind of led us off with a really good, meaty question to start the day with. So thanks a lot. And if anybody else has any ideas or thoughts, drop them in the chat there, and we'll keep those going. Let's see, who else do we want to welcome onto the camera today? Let's say hi to, let's go to John Mansour. Welcome back, John.
Hello, fellow product managers. How's everybody doing today?
Fantastic. Good morning.
Good, good.
Want to tell everybody what has your attention today, John?
Well, lots of good things going on here. So yesterday, we just made the formal announcement of our customer outcome framework. And the goal there is to get product management, product marketing, sales, and customer success to all have a common view of the customer. So imagine how that would benefit product managers if everybody saw the customer through a common lens, right? Because the more they don't, the product is the intersection where that all happens. So check that out on our website framework, and you'll see it there. Let's see what else is going on. For those of you in a customer success mindset, we have our last pre-training seminar for Q1 coming up next Thursday, and it's about, formerly known as an account manager. Now you're a customer success manager. It's going to require 3 new skills. And so we'll be talking about those and how those play out. And the good news is those are skills that'll pretty much help you take your career any direction you want to go, even if it's not customer success. So that'll be the last seminar of our Q1 series next Thursday. And we've got a pretty good group registered so far. So we should have a nice turnout there. So that's what's on my mind.
Awesome. Those seminars and web trainings that you do keep on coming back with just amazing reviews. So if you haven't checked out any of John's sessions, please do. We've got quite a few recorded sessions here from Product Coffee where John has led some sessions, and his workshops are just consistently highly rated, highly effective. I mean, I remember Matt from our Product Coffee crew here went to your workshop, was it just last month? And then turned around and put those tools to use in an executive presentation a couple of weeks later and knocked it out of the park. Absolutely crushed it. So check out John's content, folks.
Music to my ears. Thank you.
For those that are product camp folks, we have to reserve the big room when John talks.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Let's swing over here and say good morning to Dustin Logan. Dustin, welcome back. How's your coffee today?
The coffee's good. The coffee's good, Jason. So I'm a product manager at Kaiser Permanente. I've had too much coffee today. I switched to water, but he's joking because I own a coffee shop in the area, and I see Jason in the cafe now and then. So, but yeah, everything's good. We're doing well. The coffee shop's doing well as well. Biggest thing on my mind today has nothing to do with the topic here today, but trying to navigate smoke testing and why product managers are being asked to smoke test in production. So totally different topic. Totally different topic. So
has anybody here faced that, being asked? That's okay, because that's what this first half hour is about. It doesn't matter. Bring whatever you got to the table. Anybody else being asked to smoke test in production? Diane's got her hand up. Jump on in, Diane. Talk about it.
Yeah, we're crawling before we walk a little bit, and as we're building teams where I am, occasionally, we're having to, we are the UAT testing a lot of the times, just because we're going to get there. But I feel that, and it's a little scary. We've got some rails around things. I don't know if what we're doing, which helps tremendously with that, is having feature flags. So we can roll stuff out. It can be behind a flag where only we can see it, and so we can do it without it being really out in the wild. So that's my only suggestion to that, is feature flags can save you there when you are having to do that for various reasons.
Yeah, I feel it's an interesting time. We're going through a transformation and at Kaiser, and a number of our teams have been through the product transformation and are following our product model, but a number are not. And our testing and our delivery managers and such are kind of lagging there. So it's been interesting.
Yeah,
I appreciate the insights.
sure.
Yep. All right. Anybody else want to jump in on that one?
Only with a joke to say, you do your best testing in production, right? That's where the good stuff happens.
So
And I
the
hate
real
to admit
testing
it, but
happens
you
anyway, right?
you can't test some things properly in the test environment. It doesn't really, or it doesn't help. If I had
Yeah.
$1 for every time we've had brilliant, beautiful tests that, checked all the boxes, you give your, product management sign off to do a thing based on that testing, just to find out that something either gets lost in translation over to production, or that code just for some reason doesn't work the same in production. And so the whole world goes haywire.
The ironic part of the conversation is none of our product managers actually have access in production, because of the nature of the application. It's a prescription-based application, and it's used for remote patient monitoring. So someone with diabetes or hypertension. None of our team actually has the app and has the devices to connect to the app to run this type of test. So very
You'd
interesting.
have to have product managers that are doctors. I gotcha.
Pretty much, yes. So,
Wow.
Hey, I just saw a post on LinkedIn this morning to this subject, and it was from LinkedIn Product Marketing actually, and it was talking about how to get feedback from your early adopters after the launch. And I'm like, I couldn't help myself, and I'm like, isn't that something you do before the launch so that you have testimonials when you launch? I'll see what kind of reaction I get.
You get a little bit of that, but there's also kind of the agile side of things, which, if you're truly being agile or lean, you're putting things out there to see how customers react and to see how real users put it to work. There's definitely that balance between making sure you've got something that's stable enough to be useful and not dangerous. And in a healthcare space like Dustin, there's all kinds of risk there. But I agree with you also about getting out there to early adopters in a protected environment so they can use it first and give you good testimonials. At the same time, they can still be giving you feedback, at that early launch. So soft launch, yeah, Holly, soft launch or a beta at least, right?
Yeah, I agree with all of this as well. And Jason, you're 100% correct. The good part is all of our work going out has gone through immense amounts of discovery work. We push that our squads spend 80% of their time on the discovery side of this. Our PMs, that is.
Cool.
But this is like very specific to that smoke testing, right? So you're in the middle of a deployment. Have you broken anything critical? And you need to roll back, or do you leave it in production, right? Very specific to that go live activity. And it's
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So
That's music to my ears. That was like the story of my life for at least one whole segment of my career there, Dustin. But at least at the time, I was dealing with sales tools for a very large international company, not truly life or death rocket surgeries.
So I'm curious. Now, with that clarification, Dustin, so it's not all your product managers can smoke test it, only a limited number of people can. And you're actually doing that during the rollout, during the actual go live. Is there a reason that product's doing that and not development or a testing resource? Is it just a resourcing issue, or
that's an interesting thing. So part of the guidelines at Kaiser and rules and regulations is because we use offshore teams, we can't ship them devices. So your glucometers, your blood pressure cuffs, they can't have them. We have one squad that's onshore, but the other two are offshore. So it throws a little bit of a kink in things.
So there's a resource capacity issue due to the offshoring implications.
Some, and not all of our testing requires devices, but there is some. So
Okay.
it's just a wild, tangled mess. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
can I
Chi-
contribute to that discussion?
yeah.
I think Jerry also had his hands up, so I wasn't really sure. Jerry,
Yeah.
you have something to
Yeah, I
say?
was going to pull him in. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you had the ability to segment your releases or your customers so that you could do progressive deployments, maybe deploy it to one or two well-informed, close customers that can do some testing and give you early feedback, and then progressively roll it out to the rest of the customer base.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. And I think it's one we probably should pursue. It's not an ability we have today. Almost like a beta of sorts, right?
Yeah.
And
But,
that's
I guess what I'm thinking about is how like LinkedIn and Facebook Meta, some of these larger SaaS products do rollouts, right? You may get the release before the person sitting right next to you.
Yep.
My son the other day had access to the new Spotify feature that has still not appeared on my client yet. I'm a little upset about. So
yeah,
that kind of thing.
That's a great point, and it's not something we've discussed yet, but it's a very accurate point for sure.
Versus I got the Spotify feature, Jerry, and was very confused and upset.
Jerry, you're not talking about the feature that said, hey, do you want to broadcast this to every device in your house? That's really annoying.
No. It's that
Okay.
new AI DJ thing they're rolling out.
Mm.
It's terrible.
I've got
Oh my
ideas.
God.
Sorry.
AI
No.
should never be put in charge of picking what you listen to. Oh my
Okay,
God.
I'm sorry, Dustin. I took the whole thing in a different direction.
I know. I'm picking up my phone now. I'm checking Spotify. I want to know.
All right, Hector, go ahead. Sorry.
So I'm thinking that it is not a product manager's job, but what it is requirements that need to be put on as part of interoperability and doing some IVMV, i.e. independent validation verification, before you actually go into a wider launch. You can call it a control introduction or whatever it is, but you need to have real patients that are not techies, because guaranteed, if you assign this to product managers, that even if they have access, they're going to be more tech savvy than your average user, who are the patients that have these monitoring devices that are brand new to them. So adding something new to something new is a clear formula for people that aren't tech savvy, that they're going to not even be able to get through the steps because nobody has walked them through or giving them any set of instructions. And this is what you're trying to discover about your users, is what is their ability to take, basic instructions and just carry it out. Don't expect that they're going to be as tech savvy as anyone in your development team or your SQA team or your product management team. It should be done by real prospects, real targets, beta users that are real patients, somebody's patients that have agreed to just try it out and give you some feedback. And you're going to find out lots of things about their ability and their skills. And often you have to dumb down your process to explain it to like a kindergarten or a seventh grader, because sometimes that's their level of understanding. All of these things is perfect formula for failure if you don't do this before you go into a wider introduction. You need to find this out as part of your control introduction. And it's part of what you would typically call doing independent validation and verification by real users.
I think that is really great advice, Hector, across the board. I think there's a definite difference in the situation that Dustin's facing right now when you're talking about an actual rollout smoke test to ensure that the deployment is going properly. Yes. And that's a kind of a very unique situation where you have where he's got some unusual constraints that don't apply as broadly. I think the advice that you gave for general launches and making sure that your software works as intended and serves the customers as intended, I think that's some fantastic advice. So.
Yes. And ideally, what Jerry mentioned, it's exactly what companies are doing today. LinkedIn does the same thing, right? For all of us that are LinkedIn users and we have the mobile app, there are some people that, and this is completely a blind test on the user side. So they know who we are that actually turns on the app and we're using it actively on a daily basis. They're tracking that without us knowing. Then they will pick a few beta users that don't have any formal agreements. And because they know that we are using it on a daily basis, they will put some things unannounced and see if we actually are able to discover them and use them during our regular application use cases that are for those type of users. So they only highlight that to do this, sort of like blindsided. As your beta users, you don't have any formal agreements. You're just they know that you're a daily user, and now they're a specific type profile of persona that they're targeting this particular feature, and they turn it on just for a temporary. It's already available in production, but they only make it available to only certain users, and they're tracking what we do with that, and they do this on an ongoing basis, location by location, market by market. When this is a global product, this is what they do globally. So they do everything from geofencing to all of this, and it's all transparent because it's part of what they're tracking on users. If you don't think about this as a product manager, you don't put it on your requirements, and nobody comes up with it because your developers and your SQA people won't know what they don't know. When you know that it needs to be tested specifically to, and that the usage will vary by market, you need to have this capabilities in order to turn it on and only allow certain users, whether or not they're formal beta customers, just get them to use and give you feedback, and only get the feedback from those actual users, and then use that to figure out, is it really ready for the market, for that specific market.
Cool. Yep. Thanks, Hector. Really great content. Thanks for kind of walking through that. I really appreciate it. And welcome back. Glad to see you here. Always good to have you on Product Coffee. Want to real quickly before we get started, I've got time for a couple more introductions. Let's jump over and say hi to Eric Winter. Eric, welcome back.
Yeah, hey, good to see everybody. Coming in from snowy Minneapolis here. And thanks for the later start today. It's helpful for us on Central Time. But yeah, what's on my mind is actually more germane to the topic today. We're embarking on some user research, and that's going to happen over the next few weeks. And coming out of that, I think what we learned today could be helpful.
Very good. Very cool. Glad to have you here. And we've been talking with Diane kind of leading up today. I think it's going to be a great session. I think you'll get a lot out of it. So glad to have you. Let's see here. Who else do we have? I want to welcome, even though you're not on camera, I'm not going to make you jump up and say hi today, but we got Jason Vincelet from Charlotte is joining us for the first time today. He's the leader at Product Camp Charlotte over there. And we are really excited to have you here and look forward to getting you on camera at some point soon. Let's say hi now to, we've got Mailing back with us. Mailing, welcome back.
Thanks, Jason. Good to see everyone. Are we doing intros or just saying hi?
We are.
Oh, okay.
We are doing intros, and what has your attention right now?
Working with, I'm a product manager at Delta Airlines, for those who don't know me. It's a little different here because I have to work with a separate strategy team, and the strategy team is the one that also does like change management communication to the field. So I work on the messaging / chat product here for customer support. And so when there's changes, so we have like two customers, right? I call them the internal versus external customers. External are the passengers, internal are the ones who use the software to do the messaging. So for internal, when anything changes, it's the whole who moved my cheese thing. So you have to be very clear and concise with how you communicate any changes, even if you moved a button. And you have to do it at least 2 weeks in advance. And there's just all these things because they're so stressed out with answering these messaging, these messages with customers. And so our strategy team, since they're in charge of launching those communications, I think they haven't found out the formula yet for how to communicate to the internal users when things are happening, the timeline, all of that. And so it's on my mind because as a product manager with that hat on, I'm constantly thinking like, okay, how do I help them figure this out so that, you know, we kind of cause as little pain as we can whenever we push changes out.
That is a big meaty one. I don't know that we'll have a whole lot of time to go down into it here in the intro round. But so if I sum up your kind of what has your attention real briefly, you're thinking very hard about communicating change to your customers as updates roll out, and making sure that you've got the right rhythm of that communication.
Yep.
to ensure a successful transition, a successful update, and customer satisfaction along the way.
Exactly. Yeah. And my last company at SalesLoft, we had a product marketing team that they were the ones who were like going like this and saying, yep, we think we should roll out this much communication. We think we should, you know, make a big splash or little splash. And so I'm kind of having to wear the product marketing hat as well here at Delta. So not needing to get it solved today, but just that's what's on my mind if anyone has experience with that. Because I'm still getting my feet wet at the Delta climate, you know, been here 7 months. So I'm trying to figure out what that rhythm is like and dynamic.
Gotcha. That'll keep you jumping for a little bit, but glad to have you back here. Congratulations on starting with Delta. I know there's a lot of exciting stuff going on over there. We talked a little bit about it last week too.
Yep.
But I think let's start moving into our topic for today. And I want to, tee a couple things up before we get into our actual presentation, and it's not even a presentation. We've got a really kind of got a coffee chat type of discussion today. Everybody's welcome to jump in and participate, but we're going to be talking with Diane Bowman here in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to take just a quick moment to highlight and thank our sponsors once again. These weekly programs wouldn't be possible without a bunch of great sponsors that help us succeed every week, every month, every year. They've been around to help us with content, with funding for the bandwidth that we need to run this program, as well as all the services that we provide in the community that we're building. So I want to thank Method. I want to thank Genuine Parts Company, Sophion, the Product Management University, and featureupvote.com. I'm going to drop some links here in the chat, and there's also links that you're out there on YouTube. There's some links in the description, and we'd really like to ask you to check out all of these sponsors who make this possible every single week. Check them out, learn about them. If you're looking for a service or something in a space that our sponsors cover, please give them a call, reach out to them, and give them an opportunity to earn your business, and tell them you heard about them on Product Coffee. So with that being said, there are a couple of other quick announcements. We've just started our newest book club on Product Roadmaps Relaunched. If you haven't read this book, it's got a bunch of authors, including Bruce McCarthy and C. Todd Lombardo, have put together a fantastic manual for developing effective product roadmaps in the modern product age. They've taken some old thinking and some new thinking and brought it together to really give product managers a great resource guide. We're doing a group read of this at the Product Coffee Book Club, and that is free and open to everyone. Just go to productcoffee.com/book club and sign up, and we will send you invitations, calendar invitations to join our weekly Zoom calls to discuss it. And there's also a link to go over and buy the book. And we're going to be discussing chapters 1 and 2. So just kind of getting into it this week. You can grab a copy, you can grab a digital copy and catch up with us. Even if you don't have the book in your hands yet, you can join the discussion. You'll get a lot out of it. And we've got a great group of folks that are going to be talking about this book every week. We're also working on having the authors in for a author Q&A near the end of reading the book to kind of go deeper on some of their newest thinking. And we'll look forward to hearing them in late April or early May. So join us at productcoffee.com/book club. Be a part of that discussion. It's a lot of fun. You'll meet some great people and learn some good product stuff in a different kind of way. So see here. Next week, I never drop in the news. Next week, we're going to be having an Ask Me Anything session on win-loss interviews. So we're going to go really deep into conducting great win-loss interviews with some tips and tricks and just a general open discussion about some challenges and how to move your organization towards exposing product management to the creating the opportunity for win-loss interviews and then conducting them well. It's going to be a great discussion here for everybody who is, if your product is being sold to customers and being not bought by customers, the win-loss interview session next week will be a great conversation for you to dig into how you can learn more through this process. But today, we're going to be focusing on a customer spotlight, which is a tool and an approach that Diane Bowman introduced at Silverpop years ago when we worked together there. And Diane is now the Director of Product Strategy at MetaStreams, based here in Atlanta. And she has, and this approach to bringing voice of the customer into her teams and driving innovation and change based on a real insight into customers has really helped catapult her career and is one of the many things that she's done to emerge as a leader in the organization she's been a part of. And we wanted to share her approach to bringing voice of customer to the team with you today. If you want to learn more about Diane, go over to productcoffee.com/now. We've got some information about her, a link to her LinkedIn bio, and we'll be dropping on that page later on today. We'll be dropping a slide presentation, a template that you can use if you want to adopt this approach that she takes, that she's put together for you. So grab that page. We'll also drop it in the notes document, which is at productcoffee.com/notes. And we ask everybody who's on the call today to go over to productcoffee.com/notes and jump into that document. And what we do is we take notes together as a team. Instead of taking your own private notes, as you hear an insight or have a question or a thought, make sure that it's getting captured in a way that will help you in the future in our notes document. That's a permanent record of today's session. I obviously can't keep notes as I'm kind of talking with Diane, so I ask everybody else to help out with that and to help each other. Drop your LinkedIn link in that document as well if you want to connect with people here. It's just a good way to kind of keep the connections flowing. You can bookmark that notes document and save it into your own Google Drive so that you got access to it in the future when you want to refer back to what we talked about here today. And we'll have the link to Diane's slides in that document as well. So without further ado, let's get to Diane. Diane, welcome to Product Coffee. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really fun to be able to talk to a lot of people, a lot of experts, and I love all the great ideas. And, it just is a great opportunity. So I appreciate that very much.
I've been really excited about this. I think last year when we were starting to think about the content that we wanted to cover in 2023 at Product Coffee, this concept and this approach was one of the things that was really high on my mind, because I witnessed how transformative the Customer Spotlight series was, not only to your team, but to all the teams and organizations that you touched with it at Silverpop. And I really wanted to, but before we do that, I'd love it if you just kind of introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about your background and how you got into product management in the first place.
Yeah, can I share one of my slides? Because,
yeah, absolutely.
As we were certainly all talking about today, and I saw in the chat, some days it's like if you don't laugh, you'll be crying, right? So I think this will also help tell my story as well. So let me go here. And so, yeah, get me going here. So everybody gets to see me with fruit on my head. I started back in the theater. I'm actually someone that came from an acting background, improvisation and theater management. And so how did I get to product management? It's so funny to me to hear when we talk about, hey, how did you get into product management, which is one of the series that Jason has. everybody comes from a variety of things, and then we all kind of land as what I call, we're jack of all trades, master of some. That's what I like to think, and always learning. But what was really interesting to me is how I would always go back to a lot of the things that I learned in that basic stagecraft career, because it is a study of human behavior. And so much of what we do to understand our users is trying to understand their human behavior. So what's been interesting is I started there. I ended up getting into corporate because, I didn't really want to live in a van down by the river eating government cheese. And sometimes when you're in that business, that's what happens. And what was interesting is how quickly I was able to adapt if I started doing training. I started in some training roles. I started in some technical documentation roles. I moved into process management. I moved into an analyst position. And then and even project management, I'd done a variety of things. And as I would go role to role, I would be doing that piece, but I wouldn't necessarily be doing some of the other pieces. And I'm like, I wish I could do something that lets me pull it all together. And a friend reached out to me and said, we've got some product management roles. Is that something you'd be interested in? And I said, well, looks awesome. Looks like it would give me an opportunity to pull a lot of these skills together. So I ended up in product management about 11 years ago. And it's been very true. And as I pick up a new skill in product management, I immediately go, oh my gosh, this is just like what I used to do here. It's improvisation, right? In a lot of ways, or it's this human connection that we're trying to make and discover and understanding what users need and how they react to things. And that is just a lot of the core to it. So after going through a variety of roles in product management, both as, with a company and even working in a consultant role at a period of time, and then coming back, I ended up where I am today at MetaStreams, which was just a fantastic opportunity. I wanted to grow into that next level of role. And it's been interesting because the company that I'm with is a company that has been together as a family for a very long time. We've got, the original creator of the tool. So very tech savvy at the management leadership level. They have deep industry experience. I have healthcare experience in my background, not nearly the level that they do, but I'm here to really help pull in the product strategy, some of the product practices. And we are learning, just as some of you are, we've got to go back a little farther. We got to crawl first before we can run. And it's been a great opportunity for me to be able to pull in things that I had been doing at other places, and also to realize I've got to start back at the beginning. We haven't started doing customer spotlights where I am yet because I'm still gathering some of that data. We're just starting to do some user interviews and things like that. So it's really been interesting to get from where I started with fruit on my head doing cabaret, as well as other roles like that, all the way through sort of a corporate life cycle, and now to the product management strategy at MetaStreams. So it's been really fun.
Very good. Very good. And thanks for that background. And folks weren't able to see your slide. So if we go back to some more, we'll double check that. I did flash it. I did put it up there on the screen while you were talking a little bit though. So we got it up there.
Oh, okay.
But next time we go, we'll make sure that I'm not sure what went wrong there. So apologies for that.
That's okay. I can unshare and try to reshare if that helps.
Yep.
Let me try that. Okay. Let me go back here. Because, half the fun is the picture, right?
Uh-huh. I almost pulled that that meme that Aaron made about your quote from Acoustic, but I decided to withhold that one. I'll send it to you later.
All right. Now are you switch seat?
There we go.
There we go. All right.
All
Yeah. So,
right.
this is where you start. This is where you end up. But I've loved every minute of it. It has definitely been my journey. And what's funny is occasionally, and I ran into this with my role when I was with Trizetto, come to find out the product manager I was working with, who had come from another company, she actually also had background in drama and theater. And it's just, we find each other. There's actually several people that I've run into, and we all find and say the same thing, that there are a lot of things in that sort of study of human behavior that comes with that stagecraft training that can really translate into product management. So that's made it really fun for me. And as Jason mentioned, what I'm really going to do is I've got some slides to just sort of use as talking points. You know, it's everything. It's sort of to kick the discussion off. I definitely want, you know, it's an interactive setup here that we want to go through. So, but just sort of to give you an idea of, let's see, get this going. Let's see, now you're seeing it. Let me just get this back up. Are you seeing still the screen? Are you seeing the one we will learn?
Yeah,
there we
we've
go.
got you.
There we
We've
go.
got you.
Okay. So yeah, as Jason mentioned, I mean, what we'll learn, or more like what we're going to learn together and discuss together, is, you know, bringing that real customer experience to the team. Because I always try to remind myself, sure, we've done a lot of research, we've got a lot of good information, we've got the quotes, but it's that real human experience and that human behavior, and also remembering that your development teams and the other people within your organization, hey, are human people too. And we can get caught up in data, we can get caught up in all of the different tools that we use, and it's there on the page. But we all have seen, when you're telling a story, everybody's perception of what you said, everybody's perception of what that means, can be vastly different. And it's always amazing to me, and especially with working with offshore teams, because this is another piece that this has really helped with working with offshore teams, because you just never, you can't assume that they're understanding exactly what makes perfect sense to you. You said it 20 times. Why isn't it sticking? So bringing this real customer experience in front of them is something that made a big difference for me, and it builds more user empathy. I found also that this tactic, you typically will have people that are very quiet, or especially if you have, like say on a development team, you have like a really outspoken one person on the team. Everybody else kind of just nods, you know, doesn't really say anything. And suddenly people that hardly spoke were starting to speak up as a result of this. So it made a huge difference there. And, you know, the more people speak up, the more input you get, and the more perspectives that you get. It also started to inspire innovation in places where I'd been saying, well, give me some other ideas. Let's discuss. They would be like, yeah, okay. We got the requirements, 5 points. Let's move on. Like, no, it's the beginning of a conversation, right? So getting that, and also being able to brainstorm the ideas together, because we get the best ideas from a shared or understanding as opposed to just one person or two people. So let's kick off the first set of questions, right? So here's what I'd tried, and very much like a problem solver, I tried every little thing I had in my toolkit, right? And so everything from user stories to user personas to my use cases to, sharing the quotes, sharing some metrics around the users. And I would have all this in a lovely presentation, and they would just be like, is it lunch yet? Or just put it in the story and the ticket, and tell us what you want us to build. And I'm like, that's not really resonating. So what are some of the other tools that people have tried to get this message across when you're trying to explain to other teams about this customer and brain dump all of that information for your teams?
I've had the pleasure of working with engineers that actually wanted to be on customer calls, so I didn't really have to bring it to them because they wanted to be involved. And as soon as you have somebody else in the room when you're given a readout to the rest of the team that can like jump in and add additional information or provide additional context, that's been extremely valuable. So
that is so true. I saw someone mention, especially in a company where you're in a transformation, is find that one person that gets it, right? That is willing to sort of contribute and bring that along. makes a huge difference. Sometimes you may be in a situation where you haven't found that person yet, or maybe, you need to be able to really get it across the whole team. But yeah, absolutely. Having a partner in crime is a great help. What else we got?
John and Graham have hands up. And Mei-Ling.
Jump over
I'll,
here to, yeah. Okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So great stuff you're talking about here. And I'm kind of with Jerry. So when I was in my practitioner days, I always brought my, product owners at the time and engineers, into those customer calls. And relative to your topic here about, the innovation is, you're right. Everybody takes a little something different away from these conversations. And to me, the value as a product manager was my engineers always figured out some different way to implement something to give the customer the benefit or the outcome they were looking for that we hadn't thought of. And in a lot of cases, it was a whole lot easier than what we were originally thinking in terms of what we were going to do to the product. So I tried to make them part of every customer conversation, customer meeting I had, because there was tremendous value in it for all of us. And, of course, they're totally energized when you take one of their ideas and it suddenly hits the scope and they take it forward because now they have some ownership in it. So, nothing bad came from that. The only instruction I would give them is you are to be seen and not heard on this call. We're not going to start designing ideas on the call. So just listen.
That was what I was
danger.
going to say is my challenge was either time, if limited, their time to be able to participate in calls. And I totally wanted them to, but then it was constant solutioning. And so, yeah, finding the right person, to be able to participate in that calls is really helpful. Go ahead, Graham, you had your hand up too as well.
Yeah, sure. A couple of things that kind of worked for me. In my world, where product and engineering are a step removed, we have very little direct contact with customers. That's all kind of handled by customer success. So sometimes it is a little bit easier to think of customers as numbers and as problems that need to be solved. But anything that brings the human element back into it works. So a couple of things that kind of worked for me have been like sharing around things like customer testimonials when we do have them. As soon as you see a customer's face and you hear them speak passionately about what problems the solution is solving for them, you make a little connection with them and you're more driven to want to solve things and make their life easier. I've seen it happen with very technical people as well. And similarly, sharing support cases. So my background actually is in tech support. I moved sideways into product and kind of used my support experience as a foot in the door there. And I still do it today where we've got a real problem. I'll just, screenshot the email that the customer's sent in where they're describing what's actually happening and what impact that's having. And just drop that into the Jira story or whatever it is. And it gets more buy-in than not having a tangible real world example does in my experience.
Awesome. Yes. I think Mei-Ling, you and Eric had your hand up. I'm not sure which one was first, but jump on in.
Yeah, thanks. So in my experience, what I've done is because I had the capability to record the sessions, I'd start off the interview and saying, hey, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to record this. It's more just to share with my team so they can understand your pain points and empathize with you as well. And then they're usually fine with that when I introduce it that way. And then I had a folder or a drive where everyone could access a bunch of different customer interview recordings. And so they could hear and see the visuals that were happening in those conversations. A lot of times, again, like someone had said, they tend to be really busy. So I try not to interrupt their blocks of time for heads down time. So that is usually the best way, like an asynchronous way of doing it. I'll also take really good notes and put those in the same drive or actually a separate drive of like, if they wanted to read the text instead of the feedback, and I would organize it with like quotes and then action items at the end or product requests specifically in one section as well. And it would just really get them thinking, and they could access whenever they wanted those recordings or notes, and it really made good conversation. Sometimes if something surprised me in a customer conversation, I'll bring it up during one of our Scrum ceremonies. So I'll say something at stand up like, oh, I'm really thinking about this today, or I'll say it at planning or grooming, wherever it's appropriate, that is surrounding either what's on my mind or what we're discussing during that sprint.
Awesome.
I'd second what Elaine said. Is, that's been highly valuable in my experience. And then maybe a version of that too is taking some key snippets out of maybe an hour interview session and sprinkling them in a Confluence document or a PowerPoint in the context of the story you're trying to tell. But listening directly from the customer really makes it resonate, I've found, with other stakeholders.
Absolutely. And I'd even seen a thread back in February. I think it was started by Casey, and then Matt, you're on the phone. Matt Patina's talked about the snippets too. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we've all come to a lot of what we're going to talk about today for the very same reasons. And what really helped me is when I found just the right mix to kind of put it together in a session at the right time in the right place, very much focused on the most important things that resonated depending on the team's perspective. Go ahead, Haley.
Hey, it's Holly. So not to rehammer a lot of great things that other people have said that I completely agree with across the board. Eric, great point. Mei Ling, John, totally agree about, who you take with you matters, and everything people said about, time and place for solutioning and finding your partner. I was lucky enough that I've had a set of products where I had that person. I just had to control their voice in the room and say, let's not do this now. Don't try and skip off and build new software while we're talking to the customer at the same time. And buddy up with their technical person in the room and leave everyone else behind. But then I've also had to go find that evangelist, like you were talking about, Diane, and kind of bring somebody in. And one of the ways that, I have done that, taking the problem to the team in a way that turned out to create that person who then got that inspired that they took that role on is, Allison, you said a great thing in the chat about a visual. And I would think about, and this may not work for every context, every product, every problem or thing that you're doing, but how you can make it resonate with something in their real life. And, something I always try to do is kind of reframe it as something that we all experience, right? Like I explained something in payments the other day by using a Target checkout experience to somebody, which is not at all what it was about, but try to find that thing that makes sense. In my scenario, I was working on electronic payment authorizations for corporate banks. Not something that software developers understand, right? They're not bankers. They're not business people. They don't know anything about how money actually moves. They just want to write the code to do the thing. But if you walk them through a scenario and you could draw it on a whiteboard, I did not build the experience. I did not build a UI or an app to do this, to think light. I mean, I could have, but time. It's just walking them through that same context, that same thing, but in their life. I'm like, what if it was your checking account, right? When you look at your checking account, how does this, work when you see these payments? What if you had to stop and you had to authorize each one of these things before it could actually process to your account? Now imagine your bill is going to be late because you didn't take the time out of your day to stop. Right. So tying it into their life, all of a sudden can make it very, very real, and they can suddenly get it. So that would be my only thing, is if you can do a visual, that's a best thing, I think, for how many people's brains work, but just tying it also to something in real life for them will make it meaningful.
That is great. Yeah, that's very true. Really put it in a perspective of everybody understands when, something doesn't balance, right? You can't do X, you put it in real terms. Hey, Matt, what was your question?
Hey, Diane, I love the analogy to theater. I secretly enjoy theater. I've attended a number of performances here in New Orleans by some talented folks, so I can appreciate this.
Well, it's not a secret, Matt. You just announced it on YouTube.
Yeah,
that's true. So, and sometimes I do that too.
Right.
So maybe checking in with the audience, when you're sharing those tidbits from the customer, and you're also articulating what this user experience is or could be like, or whatever it is that you're doing, checking in with your audience to say, okay, what did you just hear from me, or what do you think about that? What are some of your thoughts on this, to see what they're hearing from you, and also prompting them to speak up or contribute some thoughts, especially for some of those quieter folks in the room, like you mentioned. Maybe you call on them third or fourth, perhaps give them a little time to think about it, because they like to ruminate on that stuff. and
Yeah.
check in with them and see what sort of thoughts they have, what sort of feelings they have about what you're sharing.
Absolutely. And that was, thanks for the segue of there's several things that as we get into some of the template points, that is absolutely, when you get to certain points and showing this data or showing the snippets or showing the thing is stop and be silent for a minute because they may be ruminating on it. And then just almost like a user interview, it's like, so what'd you think? I mean, that was the funniest thing to me is the first time we kind of found these really good snippets and these things that really brought it to their attention and they could see the users interacting is just going, hey, what'd you think? And all of a sudden everybody spoke up at once. They were like, what? Why? What are they doing all this? And it was just amazing. So yeah. And then just let them go in the conversation. You can always unpause in just a minute, but let them, if they start to like really interact with it, or you see the surprise on their face, sometimes it's even, and this is harder to do on Zoom, body language. I would watch body language when I was doing it within a room of people, is I would suddenly see someone that usually they were listening, but they were maybe on their computer a little bit, or they were kind of looking out the window. Suddenly they were paying attention. It makes a huge difference. So that'll kind of segue. This is one that I also, just we've seen this drawing 1,000 times, right? This is what happens when we think we're landing it. We think they understand the customer perspective, and something comes out and, oh yeah, maybe we're smoke testing it like you mentioned before. And we suddenly go, that's not where we were trying to get to, but I did all this discovery and I did all this work. What's missing? Why isn't it landing? And there's many ways that certainly they can build it. If you understand the user, trying to keep the complexity down to the minimum, right? So all of these things, you've kind of talked about, but this is yet the problem I was trying to solve. And so this is what I looked like. Yeah, there was a point when I got here and I was just like, I cannot figure out how to get these guys on the same page. Anybody else felt this way daily? Right?
Way more paper though, Diane. Lots of paper.
Way more paper. And I have all
maybe some Kleenex
and some clean. Yeah, those days too. I have
towel. Just go with towel. Save the trees.
Right. Sometimes I'll use a whiteboard, but I've got like those giant Post-it notes, and they're all over my office. Just because suddenly I need to get up out of my seat. I need to not be doing it in an electronic whiteboard. I just need to be drawing on paper to try to get things out. So yeah. So when I hit this point that I'm like, I have tried everything that I can think of. I went back to my product and I'm like, okay, Diane, what's the problem you're trying to solve, right? Why isn't it landing? Why do I need it to land? How can I get their attention? Where can I get what is going to need and resonate? And I had to do it efficiently because they have their team ceremonies. We have times that we allocate to be able to have these conversations, but I wanted to make sure it was efficient, right? I didn't want to just have them be sitting through yet another presentation. I wanted it to be interactive. I wanted it to really be the key things. And this was done iteratively for me. I started out with a variety of information and I listened and looked at their reactions, and there were some pieces that I'm like, yeah, they could have cared less about that. And so I would drop that the next time and I'd add something else, or I'd at the end be saying, what other information would you like to know? Right. And so then I would add those things over time. So it definitely evolved. And you'll see in the template that I have, don't have to use all those slides. Use the ones that are going to resonate with your team the best of what the problem you're trying to solve, right? What particular part of the user empathy is not quite there, and focus on that. So you may have 2 slides, you may have 5 slides, but I usually tried to keep it down, or it was just sharing that snippet, right? Depends on the time that you've got and how much you really need to have it in order to get the point across. So I think we've covered, has anyone had this issue, but is there anybody else that wants to share have you been here where you've tried a variety of things like you've heard on the call, people suggesting, and but it's still not quite there. Anybody got anything to share on really running into this similar issue in your particular case?
One thing that stands out to me, Diane, as you talk about this is that, communication is really a two-way street. And so even if it's just a brief retrospective yourself after you've had a conversation with your team about what landed and what didn't land, is kind of a way to like start thinking about how you might better inform them or engage them in the future. I like that.
Absolutely. And I see John's hand up.
Hey, yeah, one thought that I had is sometimes I've seen this happen with product managers where they're trying to explain user information, but they do it in context of, I've already solved the problem. And I find that, technical people will get most engaged when they're part of finding the solution. And if you do all this user research and say, I did all this user research and now this is what we're going to do, then it kind of boxes them out. And then it becomes, why do I need to be here? You could have just emailed me and told me what I need to do.
100%. I think that's so important, John, just to jump in and second that. It's we talked about like not letting them solution, but we as product people are guilty of it too. And to John's earlier point, we probably are the farthest, John Mansour, the wrongest people, right? Yes, and I know that's very grammatically bad. I did that on purpose. The wrongest people to be doing that, right? So if anyone needs to do it, let them do it. But bringing it as a group, right? We're going to solution things better together, right? It's like, even in your, your family, you talk things through, you don't just jump off a cliff and make a decision, right? Because other people think about other things that you're not going to think about. And that's so true. And when we try to solve the customer's problem, even if we're brilliant, right? Even if we used to be solution architects and got into product that way, there's something we could be missing. And we're devoiding them of the fun part of their job. That's how I used to explain to a VP of product who liked to tell me what the solution was before they'd even listen to what I told them about the user experience or what the customer inputs were, or what the problem even was. And you just took the fun part out of our entire job. You already have UI CRAN mock-ups of this whole thing. That's me and 100 other people who now have no point to exist.
Very true.
Right. And John, I see your hand up too. John Mansour. Back down.
Yes, and I want to focus on your second bullet point there. Why is my VOC not landing, and what do I need to do? And so, for all of you out there who have been in this dilemma, a lot of times, even when we have, engineers or our designers on customer calls, a lot of times, and this goes to our facilitation skills as product managers, a lot of times the voice of the customer, they're too mired in the product. And we get all wrapped around the axle because we're having product discussions before we have any context around what it is we're trying to do and why it's important and why something needs to change and what the bigger objectives are. And so that's where I find, it's like, well, we talked to a bunch of customers, but we're still not clear. So I think that's one of the biggest things I've seen about why VOC doesn't land, because it's you're having VOC through the lens of the product, not through the lens of what the customer is trying to do and why it's important to them.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. That's what I found to be true. Maylene?
Yes, I'm going to talk about sometimes team dynamics with developers. Sometimes you have the ones who have the pride and the ego, and they have this solution already in their head that's like brilliant and it's super complex and it's something that they really wanted to work on, but then you have to talk them down from that and say, you know what, that's brilliant. However, what is the value we're bringing to the customer? It sounds amazing, but does it make their job easier? Does it make this customer's life easier? Are they going to have to do 10 steps to accomplish this versus 5? So I try to bring it down like, hey, let's remember who we're doing this for. Let's remember what we're putting out into the market. Wouldn't you rather bring value to them and have them like shout out your compliments from the top of a roof versus you being able to brag about some complex solution you delivered.
Right. And, one point there is what I've sometimes run into is that, all right, that sounds awesome. That sounds great. Remember, we'll have to maintain this. And
Yeah, that's a good one.
that is the thing that's great. That was the fanciest thing I've ever seen. And the user experience, right, was good. It was still, it was also a little complicated and hard to understand, but it was the maintaining piece. It's like, if you build something that is incredibly complex and you win the lottery and you're the guy that really understands the complexity of this, what, now what? Right.
Yeah.
If we don't have good tech doc or what, making sure that that's all shared. Yeah, absolutely. And I've also, run into that. And then on the solutioning, gosh, Jason can attest of the solutioning thing. Diane, stop solutioning. It took me a while to break that habit. And what's so funny is where I am right now is I'm not trying to solution, and they're like, but just tell us what you want us to build. And I'm like, no, I will not backslide. It's getting into I want to help you understand what the user needs to do. I want to help you understand why it's important to the user and why they're trying to do that. And I want you to let's build the solution together. That's the starting of the conversation. So we're working towards that. But yeah, trying to have the shared solution versus I'm coming up with the solution just from my product head box. Absolutely. So thanks for sharing that. So yeah, these are the things we've touched on. What if I showed clients working in the tool that they built? Hey, we built this thing. We think it's awesome. Let's watch somebody use it, right? And we wanted to really understand those users and get to know them and start to build that human relationship where they get to know what this person's challenges are, what their pain points are. And we've talked a lot about, yep, those are the kinds of things that we gather. So this is how I came up sort of with the customer spotlight. And notice I use the term spotlight, right? Everything ties back to theater in some way. But yeah, I took a particular customer, and it was usually what I'll call a friendly, somebody that always gave great feedback. They understood, that some things may take time. They understood what we were trying to get to, and they were just a really good resource to talk to and have that back and forth conversation. So I would usually start with, some of those particular customers that I knew would resonate and be able to give us some really good feedback. And what I found is that from doing that, when they saw those snippets, suddenly they were like, oh, we want to go fix that. Oh, we have to fix that. Of course, we have to prioritize it. But it was really interesting how it sparked. They suddenly saw either the wins, look how they're using that. That's awesome. Look how they're using that. Oh my gosh, what are they doing? We had no idea they worked this way. So it really did resonate with the team. So one of the other things that I did post customer spotlight, and we'll get into the slides here in just a minute of some of the ways that I put it together and this ended up being not only a team building exercise, but it was directly an output out of doing these customer spotlights is I took some of the use cases from those customers, and we had developers that worked in certain areas of the tool, worked on certain specific types. And I said, let's go into the tool together and let's build this end to end. And we actually broke up into teams, and we had very cross-functional teams, and we sent them away into groups, like an exercise, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, go build this use case. And in our particular product at the time, it was a very flexible, open canvas. You could accomplish a use case in a variety of the ways. And we found that even some of our developers had never really used the tool end to end, right? So first, that was exposing them to the real life user experience themselves as they built it. And we came back and compared. A lot of light bulbs went off. We came back together. We shared that. They started to see and experience the struggles even themselves in trying to accomplish this use case. And then to make it even more fun, when we finished this, we actually went out and did axe throwing together. And it helped us really build some team building. But that's just a bonus thing that comes. It's a little bit outside of this, but I just wanted to share how much it really also helped them to start trying to accomplish the same things that customers were accomplished using the tools that they built. So in the template, like I say, I usually would start out, and this is where, this is in the variety of things. What do you have today? Right. At the time, I had NPR scores. Those didn't always resonate with the team, but sometimes it was a good, nice to have of, what do they think? Are they rating us a 5, an 8, a 1, right? They also wanted to understand, just how much volume is this customer using within our tool. We were transaction based. So being able to say, this is how much volume they're currently piping through our system. Because if we wanted to look at performance issues or understanding, are they using the tool a lot? They're using it, all the time. They are a big customer, small customer, just to kind of help them put some context there. Sometimes I would include, this is how many. They're very active on our community request board or whatever portal that you have for requests. These are the number of requests and the type of requests that they typically put in. And then I also look at their support issue, right? How noisy is this client? What kinds of issues are we seeing that they open up with support, which can help us understand some of their struggles and pain points certainly as well. And sometimes it's just the numbers of totals. Usually once I shared this the first time, then there were some metrics that they were like, yeah, we've talked about it. It's things that I have posted somewhere. They can look at it. This one came and went depending on who I was talking to. So what are some of the other metrics that you guys have either used in a context like this or that you find are really good, helpful metrics to help a team understand the context of a customer? This pretty much cover it.
Say, don't everybody talk all at once.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John. Bring it on in.
I lost the Zoom window, or I would open my mouth.
I had to get to it before Holly, No, one of the most important metrics I would use, and for those of you who know me, that I'm just, just focused on customer outcomes, and I always start there. And so when we implemented a significant piece of functionality, we had a whole process in place where we had specific customers, early adopters we were tracking if it was something new, something like that. But we were always tracking to what extent customers were getting the outcome that they intended to get from some new piece of functionality or new product, to figure out exactly how good the product was. And, the one that rings in my mind is we developed basically a way to upload back in the day credit card transactions into an accounts payable system when corporate purchasing cards became all the rage. And, it was actually a pretty simple implementation of just, being able to take credit card files and format them into our AP system. But the outcome customers were getting was enormous in their mind because of the amount of time people labored. They were saving in accounts payable from not having to enter like thousands of transactions manually. So I would always look to things like that first to see, okay, are customers getting the outcome they expect or that we mutually expected? And if so, great, we would promote those wins, like you said earlier. And if not, we would figure out where there were additional hurdles that we needed to remove to get that outcome. And I would always start there and work my way back into, other metrics that may have mattered to us internally.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great one because especially the tool I was working in at the time with Jason was an automation tool. I'm in an automation tool now. It's the time savings. So much of the time is the reason you want automation is to save you from manual work, right? To be able to do this more efficiently. And that's a great one to measure for sure. How much time did we save the customer by having this data available to them? They didn't have to do it manually, for sure.
I mean, when you're profiling, we also wanted to see, in certain cases, they had competitor product that they also used, or longevity with, in our relationship with the customer in a B2B sense, and then the value they represent for our company. Those are good profile things to kind of give the importance level of this conversation.
There you go. That's thank you again for the segue. I love how great minds think alike. So yeah, this is just another one of like top ideas. But yes, to your point, I always have a profile picture in there of this is the person. This is what they look like, right? This is their name. This is their role and their title. How long have they been using their product? And to your point, what other products did they use? So we have an understanding of that. If there's certain characteristics that help us really understand who Susan is, what are the main tasks that she does in the product? If there's certain features that she uses or doesn't use, is she a top user of one of the particular features? And then, as you get to know some of these clients, and I know, gosh, over time, I've built great relationships through clients, or if I'm working with client success, they also may be able to give me some information on, what are some of the characteristics or favorite things that they love about the tool, or whatever some of their pain points. Anything that you can add within their sort of, this is the customer I'm spotlighting, this is who they are, and, both the soft data of understanding their personalities. I'll mention that I always put the website of the company that they're with, just so, you can go out and learn more about her company. And then throughout this, I would always stick their logo in the corner of the presentation just to remind them, this is this company, and let's understand this company and this person in this company, so that they understand the big picture of what that organization is trying to do, as well as what this person is trying to use the tool specifically to do. Because you get a lot of, what are the company's goals? What are the companies trying to do, and how she fits into all of that. So that's a big piece. And, occasionally, if you ran into a customer that, wasn't necessarily comfortable with pictures, then I'd usually pick another one, because I think it does help to be able to see the person face to face, especially when we have limited in person. When you certainly have it in person, that's awesome. When you're able to do Zoom, that's awesome, right? And see faces. But certainly now that I'm in healthcare, there's some folks that, that they're just not comfortable with that. So, there's usually someone on the team that is, and I may go to that other person, because I think it is important to understand who they really are as people as well as users.
I was just going to jump in and say, sorry.
Yeah.
I think you should also point out this is not a persona.
Yes.
Personas aren't people.
Yes, very much so. I know that before I got here, we had done some user personas. UX spent a lot of time putting together user personas, and they just didn't land. I mean, we would use them. We would use them for a while, and everybody would, okay, we get it. And they usually were somewhat based on 2 or 3 people, right? They were a composite of a type of user. But it just made a huge difference when you brought the person, the real person in mind, and their voice, and what their day-to-day life is. What's their backlog? How stressed are they, right? What are they trying to do? Haley, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, Holly.
Sorry.
Love when we were first talking about this. I loved that so much, that you're doing that, like to Cortland's point, right? Not based on persona, right? Which is not a bad word, right? They're a great thing, but we've all fallen down that trap, right? Of you're creating this kind of generic persona, and you grab some picture off the internet that looks kind of like what you're trying to portray. Hey, Greg is a guy who needs to leave work by a certain time and likes to play golf on Saturday and has 2 kids and a wife. It's busy, and right? We've all done it. I'm not even saying it's a bad thing, but to that point, right? We don't connect with it the same way. And I was just nodding and grinning so hard when you're talking about putting the picture up, because there is so much science, not to nerd out on that, but about how we as human beings connect with things, not just because we're visual, right? But we seek that connection. So like connecting to another person, if a picture of a person is there versus, no picture, or just a logo or something else, or a picture that we know is static, the picture that came with the Target photo frame, right? we
Yeah.
don't connect with it the same way as we do when we're like, oh, that really is Susan. I looked her up on Facebook and like that's her, and like she's got all these other pictures and she has a dog, and like all of a sudden like now we're invested on a level that we're not even really aware of, but we change our behavior and it helps us build better.
Right. And because, the customers don't see this spotlight, sometimes I've pulled it off of LinkedIn, right? If they have their picture shared on LinkedIn, it's mainly just to try to make that connection any way I can. And I'm watching time. So there's a few things that I've got in the template that we've already talked a lot about. We talked about the surveys, what else do you have? The use cases, that's some of the ones that I took into the other activity is, talking about some of the things that she's trying to do on a daily basis or typical ones. Sometimes I use those, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I may have some screenshot examples, but certainly the thing that always drove it home the most were doing those recordings of them interacting with the tool and watching them navigate, because, when you're talking to them, oh yeah, I always do this. I go here and I go here. And then you show them working in the tool and they're not doing that at all, right? They're not trying to lie to you at all. It's just human nature. And suddenly they see the order in which they drag things, or the order in which they click things to complete a task. And maybe it's an order that it's not even close to what the design. Oh, we want them to go from here to here to here. Guess what? Users will go in the order they're going to go. So we have to think about that flexibility of however they want to come about it. It should be able to work to reach the outcome that they're hoping to pursue.
I think one of the really great things about this that is different from the way a lot of people handle these recordings and outputs is you didn't just put together a package for people to go review and look at.
Right.
You held a session in your Scrum room on a regular basis where you brought in this compilation to the team. And then if I recall correctly, you had your team start participating in the building of these too, right?
Right.
And,
yeah, that was
they would deliver them
outside
sometimes.
activities. Yeah, it was really cool. And, the thing I'll mention that also helped with this recording, and to touch on this that we mentioned earlier about the offshore teams. So I would do these and be able to do these with the offshore teams. And even though, English may not be their first language, and certainly they spoke and understood English, but sometimes just being able to say, I would hit this little snippet and I would pick usually not more than like the 5-minute chunk, 10-minute tops. We would watch that. I would hit pause and I would literally just see what was happening around the room, or just say, what did you think? And then be quiet. And they would start to see things pop out of their heads. People would speak up that normally didn't speak up. Or if I'm doing it with an offshore team, suddenly they would go, oh, we understand, right? It's that picture is worth 1,000 words, but it really helped with offshore teams because they were able to see the users in the tool, and it wasn't just all words and pictures for them, that they really got to see that interaction. And, they could certainly hear the users. And then if they wanted to, they could even pop some of that into Translate if they wanted to, but it really made a huge difference for them to see it, as well as certainly our US-based teams. Any other questions or ideas that people want to share about this? And let's say I've seen others do. Absolutely. We've come to this conclusion together because I think others have tried this as well and gotten success with it. For me, the biggest spark was one time the innovation that just started to naturally happen after we'd done a few of these was really exciting to watch. When we would start to groom things, there was so much more innovation and so much more conversation, and we built better products as a result. We would come up with better solutions after they really had this deeper understanding and deeper user empathy.
So I don't know if you can stick around for a couple more minutes to answer a couple more questions, Diane. We are at the top of the hour, and so I want to make sure that everyone who needs to go, please take a moment and go over to productcoffee.com/survey. I dropped a link in the chat as well, and tell us about today's session, and it'll ask you a couple of quick questions. Take you about a minute to fill it out and give us some feedback on today's session and make suggestions for some future sessions as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and that'll help us keep bringing stuff to you. we've got, for those of you who are in the Atlanta area, we've got a happy hour tomorrow night at the Village Tavern in Alpharetta. You can go over to productcoffee.com/events and register for that. We'd love to see you there as well. And with that being said, I'm going to say that's the official goodbye, and I'm going to stop the live stream, but we'll stick around here for a few more minutes for some private chat with, or for some continued chat with Diane. Also, our Product Coffee Premium members, Diane's in our premium Slack channel, so you can carry on the discussion there as well after today's session is over. Thanks everybody for coming. Glad to have you, and we can keep talking now. But for those of you on YouTube, bye bye.
Yeah, and I
Thank
do
you.
appreciate all the